4 billion years ago, something killed an entire planet. Not a collision, not an explosion, not a sudden catastrophe that anyone could have seen coming. Something quieter than that. Something invisible. Something that took millions of years to finish the job. And when it was done, Mars went from a world with oceans, rivers, rain, and possibly life, to the frozen, airless, radiation-blasted wasteland it is today. We know it happened. We can see the scars it left behind. Because the evidence is still there. The river valleys remain carved into the surface, stretching thousands of kilometers. Ancient lake beds still exist, their floors packed with sediment deposited by water. The minerals, formed only through prolonged contact with liquid water, are scattered across the terrain. NASA's Curiosity rover spent years driving across one of those ancient lake beds. Perseverance is sitting in another one right now, so this is not speculation. Mars was wet. Mars was warm. Mars had everything, and then something took it all away. That is the mystery. Because planets are not supposed to die like this. Not when they have water, not when they have oceans, not when they have all the ingredients life needs to survive. Yet somehow Mars lost everything. And the answer begins with something you have never seen. Something that has protected you every second of your life without you ever noticing it. Right now, above you, above the clouds, above the atmosphere, extending tens of thousands of kilometers into space. There is a force field. You cannot see it. You cannot feel it. You have never once been aware of it. But without it, life on Earth would not exist. It's called the magnetosphere, Earth's magnetic field, generated by the movement of molten iron deep inside our planet. A giant invisible shield surrounding the Earth. And every second, that shield protects us from something incredibly violent, the solar wind. The sun is not calm. Every second it hurls streams of charged particles into space at speeds of hundreds of kilometers per second. A constant bombardment racing across the solar system. Without protection, those particles strike a planet's atmosphere and slowly strip it away, molecule by molecule, layer by layer, year after year. Over millions of years they can steal an entire sky. Earth survives because our magnetic field bends those particles around the planet. They spiral toward the poles and create the auroras. Beautiful displays of light that exist because our shield is working. Mars once had that protection too. Mars once possessed a magnetic field, a molten core, a planetary shield. But Mars had one fatal weakness. It was smaller than Earth, about half the diameter, only a fraction of the mass. And smaller worlds cool faster. Deep beneath the surface, the Martian core gradually lost heat. The churning slowed. The dynamo weakened, and eventually, the magnetic field began to fade. Not overnight, not suddenly, slowly, over millions of years. The protection weakened. Cracks appeared. The solar wind started getting through, and once it did, Mars was doomed. NASA's MAVEN spacecraft has spent years measuring this process. Even today, the atmosphere of Mars is still escaping into space, every second. The planet is still bleeding, and if you multiply that process across billions of years, you begin to understand where the sky went. Think about what losing an atmosphere actually means. It's not just losing air, it's losing pressure. And pressure is what allows liquid water to exist. As Mars lost its atmosphere, the pressure began to fall. And once it dropped below a critical threshold, water could no longer remain stable on the surface. It either froze or evaporated directly into the thin air. There was no middle ground. The oceans didn't disappear in a single disaster. There was no giant wave, no final storm. The water simply retreated. Slowly, over millions of years, the shorelines pulled back. The lakes shrank. The rivers became streams. The streams became puddles. And eventually they were gone. Some water escaped into space. Some froze into ice. Some became trapped beneath the surface. But the planet lost the conditions that allowed water to remain liquid, and then things became even worse. Because atmospheres don't just hold air, they hold heat. Earth's atmosphere keeps our planet approximately 33 degrees Celsius warmer than it would otherwise be. Remove that insulation and heat escapes directly into space. Mars lost its blanket. The temperatures collapsed. The average surface temperature fell to around -60 degrees Celsius. The world froze. A planet that once had rain, rivers, lakes, possibly even life, became a frozen desert, all because something invisible deep within the planet stopped moving. A core cooled, a magnetic field faded, and the atmosphere began to bleed into space. This wasn't a murder committed in a moment. It was a slow execution carried out over hundreds of millions of years. And yet, despite everything Mars lost, the story may not be over. Because scientists have found evidence that something impossible may still exist there. In 2018, scientists studying data from the European Space Agency's Mars Express spacecraft discovered something strange. A signal beneath the southern polar ice cap. A reflection that suggested liquid water. Not frozen water. Liquid water. On Mars. Today. Buried beneath roughly 1.5 kilometers of ice. A hidden lake approximately 20 kilometers across. The reason it remains liquid is likely salt. Extremely salty water that resists freezing even in the brutal cold. At first, that might not sound extraordinary, but on Earth, we have found similar environments beneath Antarctic ice sheets. Places sealed off from sunlight for millions of years. Places buried beneath kilometers of ice. And when scientists drilled into those hidden lakes, they found life. Microbial ecosystems surviving in complete darkness. Living where survival should be impossible. Which raises a question that has haunted scientists for decades. If life ever appeared on Mars, what happened to it? Perhaps it died. Perhaps it never existed at all. Or perhaps it adapted. Perhaps it followed the water underground as conditions worsened on the surface, retreating deeper and deeper beneath the planet, escaping the radiation, escaping the cold, surviving in hidden pockets of liquid water far below the frozen desert above. If that's true, then Mars is not completely dead. Something may still be there, waiting, hidden beneath billions of years of dust and rock. And that possibility changes everything. Because if life emerged independently on Mars, then life did not happen once in this solar system. It happened twice. And if life happened twice here, it may be common throughout the universe. Which brings us to the most unsettling part of the entire story. The part that turns Mars from a dead planet into a warning. Mars isn't terrifying because it's different from Earth. It's terrifying because it isn't. 4 billion years ago, the differences between Earth and Mars were far smaller than they are today. Both were rocky worlds. Both had atmospheres. Both had liquid water. Both had the ingredients required for life. And yet only one survived. The thing that separated them wasn't an asteroid. It wasn't a supernova. It wasn't some cosmic catastrophe. It was a magnetic field. Earth still has one. Mars lost its. That invisible shield made the difference between a living world and a dead one. Now Earth is not in immediate danger. Our magnetic field remains strong. Our core is still active. Our atmosphere is intact. But scientists have measured something interesting. Over the past century and a half, Earth's magnetic field has weakened by roughly 9%. A region known as the South Atlantic Anomaly continues to grow. Satellites passing through it experience elevated levels of radiation. Some have even suffered electronic failures. Most scientists believe this is part of a natural cycle. Earth's magnetic poles have reversed many times throughout history. The field weakens. The poles shift. Then the field rebuilds. But Mars reminds us of something important. A magnetic field is not guaranteed forever. And when a planet loses it completely, the consequences can be catastrophic. Mars is not science fiction. It is evidence. A real world orbiting the same star as us. A world that once had oceans stretching beyond the horizon. A world that once had rivers carving valleys through the landscape. A world that may even have supported life. And then it lost the one thing holding everything together, its invisible shield. The future explorers who one day stand on Mars and look across those ancient riverbeds will understand something profound. A planet's habitability is fragile. The conditions that allow life to exist are temporary, and sometimes the difference between a living world and a dead one comes down to something nobody can see, something hidden deep inside a planet's core, something Mars lost. The question is whether we're paying attention to the warning it left behind,